Masechet Yevamot Daf Kof. We saw the Mishnah yesterday about two kids that get mixed up at birth. One is a Kohen and one is an Ived, and various consequences. We're going to be discussing more of those consequences from the Mishnah in a bit. One of the consequences was that they can eat terumah while he is a kohen. Once he's freed, then neither of them can receive terumah. And if they go to receive from the granary, then we give them only one portion. When he grows up, we don't give any of them. So we're talking about more people who can or cannot receive terumah from the granary. So here we go. Tenor banan. Asara en holkin lahem terumah bebet hageranot. The following 10 people are not eligible to receive a portion of terumah if they go to the granary where they dispense the terumah. Veluhen haresh shoteh v'katan. So these people who are mentally not capable and therefore cannot receive terumah. The Gemara will discuss each one and explain the reasons for them. So deaf person, incompetent, or a minor. Tumtum v'androginos, people who have two or unclear gender signs. V'ha'ebed, v'ha'isha, v'ha'arel, the slave, a woman, someone who's not circumcised, even if he's a kohen. V'tameh, or kohen who's tameh and cannot eat terumah, also cannot receive it. Or a kohen who marries someone he's not allowed to marry, like a divorcee. But even though they cannot go to the granary, to the dispensary to get it, it can be sent to their home. They can get it delivered. That's good. Except for the kohen who's tameh and the one who married someone he's not allowed to marry, they cannot even receive deliveries. All right, let's see one by one. So these they're not mentally competent, and therefore we do not give them the terumah in public. Although at home they can eat it. But it's not considered honorable to dispense it to them directly. Okay, I mean, Katan would have a problem that he can't really acquire something. He would need the delivery person to give it to deliver it to, in order for it to be acquired. So that just might be about the laws of acquisition. All right, tumtum vadroginos name birya b'fnei atzma ninhu. Interesting, it says atzma here as a nekeva. Sometimes it refers to them in lashon zachar. But anyway, the point is this applies mainly to the androginos who has two signs, and therefore we're not sure what if it's a man or a woman. A woman, we mentioned, they eat terumah. A woman, kohen, married to a kohen, a bat kohen, can eat terumah, but cannot receive terumah. So androginos cannot receive terumah. Tumtum, the problem is he is either tumtum is not a birya, is not its own gender, but rather is either male or female. It's just covered, and we don't know which one, and it's possible that he is a man who has not received circumcision, and so therefore it's a possible arel. So that would be the reason for tumtum, even though the Gemara says birya regarding both of them. That's probably only the reason for androginos. The slave cannot collect terumah, even if it's a slave who can eat terumah, because he's owned by a kohen, and so he'd be saying, hey, I came to pick it up for my master. Nevertheless, we're following here the Yehuda, whose opinion we saw on the previous daf, that according to whom, if someone is eligible, is on the list to collect terumah, then based on that, we will also establish their lineage. And so since an Eved does not have Kohen lineage, we do not allow them to receive the terumah at the granary, lest someone come to mistakenly think that they are a Kohen. The reason why uncircumcised man and a kohen who's tameh cannot receive it is because it's considered repulsive. It's not respectful for the terumah to give it to either of these two categories. Noseh isha she'ena hogenet lo mishum kenasa. The kohen who married someone he's not supposed to be married to, that is a penalty. We're not going to give him the honor of receiving teruma when he should leave his wife, who he's prohibited to stay with. Okay, so all those we understand. But why not a woman? A woman who's eligible to eat teruma. Why can't she go and collect a portion of teruma? And the answer is Peligi bara papa v'Rabhuna bered Rav Yoshua Chadamar mishum gerusha, Chadamar mishum yichud. Two opinions. One says because she may get divorced. Let's say she's a Bat Yisrael, married to a Kohen. She's only able to eat teruma because she's married. But if she should divorce and doesn't have children with the Kohen, she goes back to her previous status. Now at the granary, they're not keeping tabs. They're not up on all of the gossip in the town of who got divorced and who separated. And so they'll see her even after she got divorced and continue to give her the teruma, even though she's not eligible for teruma anymore. So therefore we say, you know what, gezerah, let's not give the woman, any woman at all, because the granary can't keep track of if they remain married or if they divorced. That's one opinion. The other opinion is because the granary sometimes is out in the field. There aren't many people there. A woman's going to come to collect from there. The guy dispensing the granary and this woman coming will then be alone together and violate the prohibition of yichud, of being secluded together. And so that's why, for a sense of modesty. Okay, my benayu, what would be a practical application where there would be a difference between these two opinions? Two applications. Ika benayu bedare de mikarav lemata vela shechiche behu inashe. If you have a granary that's close to town, and therefore they're hearing all the gossip and people that got divorced, so they'll know. We don't have to worry about the first reason. But let's say it's one that's not very busy. There are very few people there. It's a small town or a small granary, and so then it is likely that there will be a problem of yichud. So then yichud would apply, and the first reason would not apply. Or the other way around, or maybe it's far away, and because it's far away, they don't hear about who got divorced. So there is a problem of the first mishum gerusha, but it's busy there. So you never have to worry that the granary dispensary guy is going to be alone with the woman. All right, good. Now, back to that baraita. V'chulan mishagerin lahen lebatehen chutz mitameh v'nosei isha she'ena hogenet lo. Okay, so even though the other 8 people on the list cannot collect, they can receive deliveries of teruma, except for the someone who's tameh and someone who didn't married someone he's prohibited to, or kohen. Aval arel mishagerin le mai ta'ama. So that means that someone uncircumcised, we can send it to him. What is the reason? Mishum de anis. Well, because it's beyond his control. We're talking about not someone who's rebellious and against Judaism, and that's why he didn't get a circumcision. We're talking about someone for whom it's dangerous to get a circumcision. If he had 2 older brothers who received circumcision and died, so then he cannot receive a circumcision. If he has some disease, so then it's beyond his control. So he didn't do anything wrong. It's not respectful to give it to him in public at the granary, but you could send it home with him. You could send it to his house, and that's not a problem. All right, now tameh nameh ha'anis. Hold on. Someone who's tameh, how come the tameh person you don't send a delivery to? Isn't that also beyond his control? Well, he became tameh. Who knows? Whatever happened. He happened to trip on a dead mouse or something. So the answer is Hai nafesh onse, v'hai la nafesh onse. No, the one that is who's uncircumcised, that is a bigger circumstance beyond his control. That's really beyond his control, life-threatening thing. There's really nothing you could do about it. But the person who's tameh, you can be more careful and make sure, double check before you touch something, before you eat something, before you walk somewhere, to make sure there's no graves there. And so since it's somewhat more in his control, therefore we do not send the teruma to a tameh, even though we do send teruma to an arel. All right, tenora banan. העבד והאישה אין חולקין להן תרומה בבית הגרנות, ובמקום שחולקין נותנים לאישה תחילה ופותרים אותה מיד. Now this is a related braita to the one we just saw. that focuses on a slave or a woman, or we do not give them a portion of terumah at the granary. And in a place where we do give them things, where we do distribute something, right now we're assuming it's talking about terumah, in which case it's self-contradictory here. So a place we give to the woman first, and so that she can go home immediately, and we let the eved wait. Now, my kamad, what is this talking about? First you said we don't dispense, and then you said if you do dispense, so then give one first. Hachi kamad is what it means to say, b'makom shecholkin maaser ani notnin leisha techila. Okay, we do not dispense tirumah to avadim and women at all. But regarding maaser ani, if a person is poor, then these things are distributed from someone's home, where the poor people would come and they would line up to receive a portion of Maaser Ani. These are things that women and slaves are permitted to go and receive. There's no problem with that. So therefore, in that place, there is a precedent. It's better to give the woman first and have the male slaves wait. Or any men, right? Give the woman first before giving to any men, not only slaves or not. Women first. Okay, ladies first. My tama mishum ziluta. Why? Because the meaning for women to have to wait around in the company of men, and they're going to be, they're going to mix, and we, for the sake of modesty, will allow the women to go first so that they can go on their way and be back home and not have to wait together with the men. It's interesting because this was given as a reason by Rav Kook. For when there was a discussion whether women are allowed to vote in the new state of Israel, or will they be allowed to vote in the new state of Israel, Rav Kook gave one reason that it should not be allowed because they'll have to wait online to vote, and there's going to be men and women mixing in the voting places, and so that's not good. Rabbi Oziel said that's not a concern. Women are allowed to vote. They pay taxes, and so no taxation without representation. All right. Amar Rava meresha ki havu atu gavra ve'iteta ledina kama'e havasharena tigera legavra beresha. Rava says, "Oh, thank you for teaching me this. At first, whenever men and women used to come to me for judgment, there would be a line. There would be a waiting room, and so I would take the cases of the men first. Why? Amina de mechab mitzvot. Men are obligated in mitzvot, and so now they're waiting around here. They're not doing mitzvot, so I would hear the cases of the men first, so that they could go back to studying Torah, doing whatever mitzvot they need to do. Pray. But now that I heard this law, I changed my policy, and now I hear the cases of the women first, because I don't want them to be waiting around in the waiting area together with men, and that will be not appropriate for reasons of modesty. My tama mishum ziluta is the meaning for the women to have to wait together with the men. All right, very interesting. Now higdilu hataruvot. So now back to the Mishnah that was talking about the two boys, one a Kohen and one an Eved. And now when they grow up, it says if they free each other. So we don't know. One owns the other, right? Assuming that they grow up and the father died. So then the son, who's a Kohen, inherits the estate, including inherits the boy who was a slave, now a man. So we don't know which one, but one of them owns the other. And so they each give an emancipation document to the other. So now they're both free. And then that lists the consequences in that case. So we ask about this. Shichriru iba'in iba ila ba'ela. The Mishnah seems to indicate that it says if they free each other. So it means if they want to, then they do. And if, let's say they don't want to, if they don't both agree, then they don't have to. Wait a second. We saw that while one of them is a slave, they cannot marry anyone, because the one that's a Kohen cannot marry a Pasul, and the one that is a slave can only marry another slave or someone Pasul, cannot marry a full Jew. So there is no overlap between who they could marry. And so now you have these two people, two men, who have no possibility of marrying anyone. And that's not good. We don't want to leave a state like that. So the Rava says, you're right. You know what? You should read the Mishnah as saying that actually the Bet Din forces them to give a freedom document to each other so that they have the ability to fulfill Piru Urvu and go and marry properly. All right, notnina lehem chomreh. The last statement, the last line of the Mishnah was a general summary statement that they have the stringencies of being both a Kohen and a Yisrael after they're freed. So what does that summary statement apply to? And you could say it's just giving a summary of all the things that came before, but who needs the summary if it's not including something new? Amar Papa leminchatam nikmeset keminchat Yisrael ve'ena ne'echelet keminchat kohanim. The Papa says it applies to a mincha offering. Here's the quick summary of mincha offerings. If a Yisrael brings a mincha offering, then the Kohen will take a kemitzah, right, a handful, and that is burnt on the Mizbeach, and the rest of it the Kohen can take and eat. If a Kohen brings a mincha offering, it's entirely sacrificed without kemitzah. And so now we have this person who we're not sure, is he a Kohen or a Yisrael? Well, we're not sure, so how are we going to treat the mincha? And the answer is, it's nikmes, we do kemitzah because this person might be Yisrael. And it's not eaten because it might be that of a Kohen. So what are we going to do with the rest of it? I mean, you'll take the kemitzah, you'll burn that, that's fine. But haketzad, hakometz karev be'atzmo, v'ashiraim kerevin be'atzman. So here's what you do: you separate the kometz and burn it, and then the leftovers you also burn on the mizbeach separately. And so that way the Kohen is not eating it, but it is being burned, so it'll fulfill either way. But now we say, hold on, that does not work. We have a general rule that anything that is partly burned on the Mizbeach, and part of it has to be burnt, then the rest of it, the leftovers, cannot be burnt on it. It's excluding the part that need not be burnt, then cannot be burned. So you can't just be machmir and say, all right, the kemitzah will burn, and the leftovers will burn just in case. If he's a Kohen, then that's fine. But if he's Yisrael, and it's not supposed to be burnt, then you cannot put it on the Mizbeach as an offering. So this is not actually a good solution. So we have a solution. Amar Rabbi Yehuda bered Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi demasik lehu mishum aitzim. No, we put it on the Mizbeach as firewood. All right, that's okay. And we can make a condition. If he's a Kohen, then we're burning it as a sacrifice. If he's a Yisrael, we're burning it just as firewood. So that doesn't violate the prohibition. Rabbi Elazar, and this would follow the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, who permits this loophole. The Tanya Rabbi Elazar omer lereach nichoach iata ma'aleh aval ata ma'aleh leshum aisim. This is the same context as the previous pasuk here. That's talking about se'od v'chol devash. You're not allowed any time during the year to have leaven or honey burnt as a sacrifice on the mizbeach for different reasons. Okay, but it could be, Rambam would say it's idolatry. It could be in general that this represents haughtiness, se'od. Devash is a starter that helps something leaven. So this is, Pesach is just one example of a korban that cannot have chametz with it in the house, but this law applies all year round regarding korbanot on the mizbeach. Okay, for whatever reason, you cannot have se'od and devash, you cannot burn them on the mizbeach as a sacrifice. But here it says lo yalu lereach nechoach. You're only prohibited to burn them as a sacrifice. If you want to burn it as fuel, then you can put it on the mizbeach. And therefore, as long as you have in mind that on condition this will be for fuel, you could take that extra leftover mincha and burn it on the Mizbeach. Okay, good. So we have an answer. But Hanicha Rabbi Elazar, the answer only works for Rabbi Elazar, who permits using it for fuel. Ela Rabbanan Ma'ika Lememar, Rabbanan disagree. And they say, no, you can't have it on the Mizbeach at all. So then what are you going to say? David like Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, did Tanya Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, we follow Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, it's different Rabbi Elazar. This is the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who says, Hakometz karev latzmo v'ashira mitpazirim al bet hadeshen. He says regarding a different type of mincha offering, a mincha of an olev v'yored, a type of chatat that if you're poor, you could just bring a flour as the offering. And in that case, you take the kometz, and that is put separately. And the leftovers, you do not burn it on mizbeach, but rather you put them on the pile of ashes that was on top of the mizbeach, but not on the fire that's on the mizbeach. So we could do that, and that's a way that we can dispense of it appropriately according to whether he's a kohen or not. We do the same thing as there. And even in that braita, where it is a minority opinion, so the rabbis say, no, you cannot do that. The rabbis only say you cannot do that regarding this hatat of kohanim, this olev yored of kohanim. There they say no, it's not enough to put it on the pile of ashes. Because it has to be burnt. But regarding here, regular mincha offering, even the rabbis would agree that it's sufficient to put it on the pile of ashes. And so there you go. We have an answer according to everyone. The next Mishnah includes some fascinating cases. We know the law that if a woman is divorced or her husband dies, she must wait 3 months before getting remarried because she may be pregnant. And so after by time 3 months comes, then she'll be showing, and we'll know that she was in fact pregnant with the first from the first husband. And so in order to establish proper paternity, she has to wait. And if she is not pregnant, and then she can get married, and then we know the next child she has is from the second husband. That's good. But what if she doesn't? She does not wait 3 months. V'niset v'yaldan. She does get married to a second man, and she has a child. V'nyadua im ben tish'a la'rishon v'im ben shiv'a la'acharon. We don't know if this is a full-term pregnancy, and the first husband is the father, or it's a 7-month pregnancy, and the second husband is in fact the father. So what do we do? Hayula banim min harishon ubanim min hasheni. So in this first scenario, let's say she also had a child with the first husband, who we know for sure that's her husband, and she also after this has a definite child with the second husband. And then this guy, the one in the middle, who we're not sure who his father is, dies without children. Both of his half brothers have to do chalitza. Both of the men, one of them is his half brother, one of them he's actually not related to. It's half brother from his mother. Both of them are half brothers from his mother. One of them is his full half brother. So they both have to do chalitza, not yibum. And similarly, if either of those two men die without children, the middle guy has to do chalitza and yibum. With both, not yibum, with both of them. Here's a diagram to help explain this. You have Yitzchak and Sarah have a definite child whose name is Shimon, and then Yitzchak dies or divorces, and now, in the meantime, Sarah has marries Yaakov. Before 3 months, she has a child, Reuven. We don't know who the father is. Is the first husband Yitzchak or the second husband Yaakov? After that, she has a definite child with Yaakov, whose name is Levi. That's all fine. Now, Reuven marries Dinah, and he dies without kids. So here's the problem. It could be that Reuven and Shimon are full brothers, both same mother and same father. If they have the same father, then Shimon could do yibum. So it is necessary for Dinah to get something in order before she marries out. But it's also possible that This is not, they are not, they don't have the same father. If they're not paternal brothers and only maternal brothers, then there is no yibum. And so he is prohibited to her. In that case, he would not have to do yibum or chalitza. But the point is, he cannot do yibum because in case they are only maternal brothers. The same thing with Levi, and therefore, both of them have to give chalitza. She needs chalitza because one of them is related, but we don't know which one, and none of them can do yibum. And the same thing would be if Shimon got married and died without children. Reuven would have to give her, do chalitza with her, just in case. All right, that's case number one. Case number two. Hayu lo achim min harishon ve'achim min hasheni shelo me'ota ha'em. Similar to the first case, except that those two other people are not related to the middle guy, because the men had children with yet other women. I'll show you a diagram. In this case, hu choletz u'miyabem vehem echad choletz ve'echad miyabem. If one of those other brothers dies without children, then the middle one can do either chalitza or yibum. And if that middle one, whose paternity is uncertain, that dies without children, then the other two men, one of them does chalitza and the other can do yibum. Here's the diagram for this. You have Yitzchak and some other woman had a child, Shimon. Yaakov also and some other woman had a child, Levi. So they are not related at all. Now, Yitzchak married Sarah, divorced, and then Sarah married Yaakov. Before 3 months, she remarried before 3 months, and turns out she was pregnant, or she is pregnant and has a child. We don't know if Yitzchak is the father or Yaakov is the father. So in this case, Reuven is not related to Shimon and Levi by his mother. The mother is only the mother of Reuven. This is definitely not the mother of Shimon and Levi. So there are no maternal siblings here. However, he is a paternal sibling to only Shimon or Levi. And so therefore, if Shimon dies without children, let's say he married someone not pictured here and he dies without children. So if Reuven, if they are half paternal brothers, well then that's fine. That's a case of yibum. And if they are not brothers, then they're not related. Happened to be that his father was married to the same woman that is this Reuven's mother, but that's not a relationship. And so therefore he's allowed to marry her as a foreign, not unrelated woman. So that's why he can do chalitza or yibum. He does have to do something, because just in case they are brothers, she can't get married to anyone else before he does chalitza. Now, if the middle one, the Reuven, marries Dinah and dies without children, then this Yevamot, she is related to one of them, so she can't just go free and marry anybody else. One of them is her brother-in-law from her father's paternal brother. So therefore, one of them needs to do chalitza, because we don't know, one just can't do yibum, because it could be the wrong one. So one of them will do chalitza, and then if this one does chalitza, for example, then this one can do yibum, because that way either this is his brother-in-law. He's the brother-in-law. He is the abam, in which case he's doing yibum, or he's not related. And there was this guy who was related, but he already did chalitza, so now she's free to marry someone else. So the second one can do yibum. It doesn't matter which one does it, as long as the chalitza is first, as the Gemara will say. Okay, now, to make it a little bit more complicated, Haya echad Yisrael ve'echad kohen. What if one of, let's say, Yitzchak is a kohen and Yaakov is a Yisrael? And so now we have a further doubt. This middle guy, is he a kohen if his father is a kohen, or is he Yisrael if his father was a Yisrael? Okay, so in that case, we're going to have the same consequences as we did on the previous stuff. Noseh isha re'uya lekohen. He can only marry someone who a kohen can marry, in case he's a kohen, so he can't marry a divorcee. Ve'en metameh lametim. He cannot become tameh lamet because he may be a kohen. If he does become, go ahead and go in a cemetery and become tameh, he doesn't get the normal punishment of 40 lashes because maybe he's Israel and he doesn't deserve it. He cannot eat teruma because maybe he's a kohen. If he did eat it, he doesn't get a penalty because he cannot eat it because maybe he's Israel. If he does eat it, he doesn't get a penalty because maybe he is a kohen. He cannot get a portion of teruma from the Goren because he may be a Yisrael. But he can, a teruma that he has, he can sell and keep the money because maybe he's a Kohen. So let them go, let someone come and prove that he's not a Kohen and take it. So otherwise, the monetary value of the teruma he's allowed to keep. He just can't eat the teruma. He does not get a portion in sacrificial meat or sacrifices that are divided up in the Bet HaMikdash. Also, not the hides of such animals that normally a kohen can take home. And people cannot give, let's say, their bechor to this person because maybe he's not a kohen. But if he does somehow get his hands on a hide or has a bechor animal, then we don't have to take it from him, the monetary value of it, because if he sacrifices an animal, regular animal, not just to eat a chulin meal, he does not have to give the normal presents to the kohen of these three sections of the animal, because maybe he himself is a kohen. So this is just a monetary value. They are not holy, so he can keep anything that's monetary value. If he has his own animal that's a bechor, he need not give it to a kohen, because maybe he himself is a kohen. On the other hand, he cannot sacrifice it as a kohen because maybe he's Israel. So what do? You let it pasture until it gets a blemish, and then once it's blemished, he is allowed to partake of it, because then it's just the monetary value, and since maybe he's a kohen, he can keep the monetary value, and know what someone would have to prove he's not a kohen in order to take it from him. And we give him all the stringencies of both being a kohen and a Yisrael. All right, now further, hayu shenehem kohanim. Let's say the first father and the second father, the first husband and the second husband, were both kohanim. So in this case, we know for sure that this child is a kohen. Nevertheless, there are still some stringencies that would apply. Not all the stringencies, like he would be able to eat teruma, because he's for sure kohen either way. But other stringencies, hu onen alehem vehem onenim alav. If either of those husbands die, he is an onen. That's the state before burial where he cannot eat meat or drink wine. So even though, since he's a for sure kohen, he can have sacrificial meat, but when either husband dies, since either one may be his father, he is in onen status. And if he dies, if this child dies, then both husbands have to act as an onen, because either one may be the father, and a father also has to mourn over the child. And according to this, you see that it is possible for the first husband to still be alive, which is strange, because this woman remarried a kohen. And how is that possible? If the first husband is alive, that means he had to divorce her. And if that is, then she's a divorcee. She cannot marry a second kohen. All right, the Gemara will discuss this problem. Okay, hu eno mitameh lahem vehem ena mitamein lo. They cannot become tameh to each other, because it is true. Maybe they are father and son, in which case a kohen is allowed to be tameh, but maybe they are not related. And so none of them can become tameh lamet for each other. Hu eno yoresh otan, aval hen yorhem yorshim oto. The kohen does not inherit them, because each one can say, "Oh, he's not my son, right? Let him prove before he takes my property." So they don't have to give it to him. However, if the son dies first, then there's no one else to inherit, because he himself has no sons. Then those two husbands will split it equally like you would any money that's held in doubt, and 50% chance it's this person's or that person's, they would split it. This child who is now, it doesn't matter if he's a Kohen or whatever he is. We don't know who his father is. So if he hits one of them, normally a son who hits his father gets capital punishment. If this child hits either one of the husbands, does not get capital punishment, because maybe it's his father, maybe it's not his father, and you don't punish someone for a doubtful crime. If he is a Kohen, if both husbands are Kohanim, then the son is a Kohen, and he is obligated to go to the Bet HaMikdash and serve during the week of the Mishmad of this husband and of that husband, because there's an obligation for all of that clan, all of that family to go. He doesn't know which one it is, so he has to go both times. He has to serve double duty. While he's there, however, he cannot get any portion, so he gets all the responsibilities, but none of the benefits of the free food that the Kohanim would get when they are serving during that week. However, if it happens to be that both husbands are part of the same clan and serve on the same week, then this child for sure is one of their kids, and so the child can serve and can receive only one share. He can't take two shares because only one of these guys is his father, so he only belongs there for one reason. And so he can take one portion. Good. The Gemara says, as it did before, and that second case, when he is a paternal brother of one of them, but not a maternal brother to any of them, he can do chalitza and then do yibum. The two other guys, one of them is his brother, one does chalitza to the Yevamot, and one does yibum, and it has to be in that order. But if one of those potential brothers does yibum first, then that is not good, because could be that he is not actually the brother, and this person is still a Yevamah who has a zikah to the other guy, to the other guy who is actually his brother-in-law, her brother-in-law, and then the one who is not the brother-in-law is going to take her, and while she still has a zikah. So one has to do chalitza first, and then the other can do yibum second. We're now going to quote a statement by Shemuel that's related, because we are going to challenge him from our Mishnah. So Amar Shemuel, Asara Kohanim Omdim. If you have a case of 10 Kohanim are standing around, Upiresh Echad Mehen Ubaal Habalad Shituki, and one of them goes ahead and has relations with a woman and has a child, but we don't know which of the men did this. So that child is called a shituki, a silenced one. My shituki. Ilemam shemeshatikin otom nichse aviv Peshita, Miadinan, Avu, Manu. Now, why is a child called a shituki? Is it because we silence him from inheriting the property of his father, and we say it's like you don't exist, you can't inherit? Well, of course, I mean that's obvious, because we don't even know who his father is, and therefore which man would he inherit? So there's no chidush there. Rather, Shemuel's interpretation is that we quiet him, meaning we exclude him from the laws of kehuna. Now, it's true, all 10 men were Kohanim, so for sure, this kid's father is a Kohen. Nevertheless, there's some problem with him that removes him from the benefits and obligations of being a Kohen. Maitama. So we ask, what is Shemuel's reason? Regarding Pinchas, it says the blessing of the Kohen, being a Kohen, will be to him and to his lineage after him. It has to be a definite lineage. We have to know who is the father. And so if you don't know who the father is, even if they're all the possibilities are Kohanim, that's an indefinite lineage. And therefore, this kid is out. That's why it's called shituki. He is silenced, he is excluded from the benefits of being a Kohen. All right, that's Shemuel's opinion, and now we're going to challenge it. Matkif la Rav Papa, Elamata gabe Abraham tichtiv, Liot lechel Elohim ulazaracha acharecha. Regarding Abraham, Hashem said that this is going to be a berit between you and me and your lineage after you. So this is the same language it says regarding Kohanim, but this here it applies to all of Israel. Over there you can't say the same thing, that this kid would be excluded from being a Kohen if they are not of definite lineage, because this is referring to all of Israel. So what are you going to say? You're going to exclude someone from being Jewish if you don't know for sure who their father is, if you know the mother's Jewish? So that doesn't make sense either. Rather, in this case, we can explain it. It's referring to prohibition: do not marry a non-Jew or a shivcha, because your lineage, the lineage of that offspring, will follow the woman's status, matrilineal descent, in terms of identity for being a Jew and being free. And so that's why it says you and your lineage after you. So yes, being Jewish refers to the male lineage. Although it doesn't matter if as long as the mother is Jewish and free, the child will be Jewish and free, even though in that case we don't know who the father is. Okay, so we can explain that pasuk as appropriate to its context. So Shemuel's okay still. Metibe, and so now another challenge to Shemuel. Rishon ra'ui liot kohen gadol. This case we saw back a Braita on 37a, where generally, if you have a Yevamah, her husband died without children, the Yavam must wait 3 months before performing Yibum, because just in case she's pregnant from the deceased husband. And what if he doesn't? What if the Yavam does not wait, and she has a child, and we don't know, is this the son of the deceased husband, or is it the son of the Yavam? Oh, well, even though you don't know, doesn't matter. That child that's born can be the Kohen Gadol, because either way, the father is for sure a Kohen. So this is a challenge to Shemuel. Hey, Shemuel, you said that if you don't know who the father is, even if you know it's a Kohen, they loses the rights to be a Kohen. But here, we don't know who the father is, and yet the Baraita says it can be a Kohen Gadol. Don't you require a certain lineage? And here you don't have it, Shemuel. And the answer is the truth is, this law prohibiting that Shemuel said is only midrabanan. Ukra asmachta be'alma, and that pasuk that he says lo uzaro acharav was only a hook to bring a mnemonic, to bring extra authority to the Rabbanan law. When the rabbis made a gezerah, they only made a gezerah if the child is born outside of marriage in a promiscuous relationship. And that's what the case was above, with 10 Kohanim, and one of them goes not marrying her, just has a child with her. There we impose this penalty. And the child cannot serve as a Kohen. But if they are properly married, then that's fine. And that's the case of this Baraita here, where you have a Yavam. She was properly deceased. She was properly married to the deceased husband before he died. And the Yavam, who also, they do proper Yibum. I mean, it's a little bit improper because he didn't wait the 3 months, but whatever he does, they are fully married. So it's not zinut, and that explains Shemuel. So it's limiting Shemuel. Shemuel only prohibits a Kohen whose paternity is uncertain if he was born from a relationship that was not married, out of wedlock. Okay, hold on. Even regarding zinut, a promiscuous relationship, did the rabbis really always make a gezerah in such a case? And this is where we bring in our Mishnah. We talked about a case where a woman did not wait. She was with one man, and she did not wait 3 months before marrying the second, and she gave birth. Now, my achar ba'ala, what do you mean after the first husband? What happened to the first husband? Ilem achar mitat ba'ala, so maybe the first husband died. So then, right, now we're going to go to the case where the first and second husbands are both kohanim. And here we saw that the child is, in fact, allowed to serve and receive iteruma and kodashim if both fathers are kohanim. So in that case, if it's achar ba'ala after means after he died, well then that's all okay, right? There's no question in that case because she was married to one man, he died, she's a widow. She's permitted to marry a second kohen. So that's fine, but it doesn't fit with some of the language that's coming up. It says that if he dies or if either of the potential fathers die, they all have to be onenim. Before the burial, they have to mourn because in case they are father and son. Now, onen alehem mashkachada b'nisuin desheni v'likut asamot dekama. Now, regarding the son being onen for one of the potential fathers, that is easy to come up with a case. So, regarding the marriage to the second man, that second man dies, so this may be the child of the second husband, so maybe his father. So that's easy. And how about the first? Well, if the first one was died before he was born, then he's not going to be an onen. But that still could be an onen when he's gathering the bones. In the olden days, they would not bury someone in the ground and leave them there, but rather they would put the body in a cave. This is also a form of burial. Close up the cave on a shelf, and then after all the flesh decayed, they would come back, say a year later, gather the bones and put them into a jar. So that day of gathering the bones, the relatives also observe aninut for that day. So this could be at some time later that child will be an onen for the father who had deceased already. So that we understand how the child can be an onen for either potential father. But how could you have a case where these two husbands would have to observe aninut for if the son died? Kama hamitle, the first husband already died. If he died, then there's no more aninut for him. So it can't be that the first husband died. Ela bigerusha, must be that she divorced the first husband. Now, if she divorced the first husband, then how could she remarry the second? Umay achar ba'ala achar get ba'ala, must be the first gave a get and then she married the second. Wait, emasefa hu en mittameh lahem vehem enan mittamein lo. So that's the case. Now they cannot become tameh to each other. Bishlamahen en mittamein lo lechum ra. They cannot become tameh to him because either one may not be the father and they're kohanim, and so if they're kohen and not related, they cannot become tameh lamet. Either one, each one, maybe it's not his son. Elahu and mitameh lahem amai. But regarding the son, cannot become tameh to either husband. Why? We understand if the second husband dies, he cannot become tameh to him because maybe he is the child of the first and he's not related to the second husband. But when if the first one dies, again, right, this is after they divorced, assuming that the first husband divorced, and then he dies. So if he is the son of the first husband, so he's permitted to become tameh because they're related. And if he's the son of the second husband, he also can become tameh because in that case the child is a halal. Why would it be a halal? Because she got divorced from the first husband, and now the second husband married a divorcee, and the child, result of that, is a halal, and a halal is disqualified from the laws of being a kohen, and therefore is allowed to become tameh for even for someone to whom he is not related, and therefore this halacha would not make sense. if it was in fact if she was divorced from the first husband. So rather, it must be a case of promiscuous relations. Let's say this woman had relations outside of marriage with man number one, had a child, and then had zinut relations with a second man, and had had a child in between. She had relations with one man and then did not wait 3 months and then had relations with the second man, and she gave birth, and we don't know who is the proper parent. Who is the father? And in that case, so maya ba'ala, achad bo'ala. When it says after the husband, it doesn't mean husband, but it rather means the one who had bi'ah with her. Okay, so it must be that's the case. Now, what's the verdict in the Mishnah? That this child must go and serve as a kohen when the time comes for the clan of the first man or the second man. The son has to go and serve both of them. What do you see here? That the son, that's a result of promiscuous relations, does serve as a kohen and is not considered a disqualified kohen. And this is this goes against Shemuel, who said that the rabbis made an isur midrabanan when you don't have definite lineage. Here you have a kid who doesn't have definite lineage, and yet he's allowed to serve. So this is a challenge to Shemuel. All right, we came a long way, but it was worth it because this is a good question. Amar Rav Shemaya b'mema'enet. Rav Shemaya says, Shemuel can have a case where this would be true. If she was a minor, and at the time of the first husband, and her orphan minor, and her mother or older brother married her off while she was under 12. And she decided she doesn't like this guy, and she objects. In that case, she's not a divorcee or a widow, but rather the marriage is annulled. It's as if she was never married. Still not considered zenut, because she was married when she was with that man. So she is not divorced, but she's not a zonah. And then within 3 months, she was married a second man, and she gave birth in the meantime. So here you have a case. That's what the Mishnah is talking about. That's why the child is not a result of promiscuous relations. She was actually legally married at the time to each of the husbands. All right, so you have a fantastic case where you could have such a thing. The problem is, mema'enet mi ka yalda. Hold on, to be someone who's young enough to object means she has to be a minor, but a minor cannot give birth biologically. Right, we have a halacha that 3 women must use a contraceptive cloth. Kitana, me'uberet umenika, a minor, a child, or a pregnant woman, or a woman who is nursing. Kitana ma shema titaber v'tamut. The reason is a minor because if she gets pregnant, she cannot bear the pregnancy and she may die from it. So this is life in danger. Therefore, she has to use contraception. Me'uberet shema ta'aseh ubada sandal. Someone who's pregnant seems to follow the belief that a pregnant woman can conceive again. And if she does, then that second fetus will put pressure on the first and not on the room, and she will miscarry a misformed fetus that looks like a sandal. Or if she's nursing, then she may become pregnant, and if she does, then her milk will dry up, and the baby will not have sustenance and will die. So these are all important reasons why she has to prevent the pregnancy. Now, ve'ezoi ketana, what does it mean, ketana? What's the definition of that? Mibat achat esrei shana v'yom echad ad bat shetem esrei shana v'yom echad. It means from 11 years and 1 day to 12 years old and 1 day. That's the time period when she would need to use this contraceptive cloth. If it's younger than that or older than that, then there's not a problem. Because if she's younger than that, she cannot get pregnant at all. If she's older than that, then she can bear a pregnancy. It's only in that 1 year between where she can get pregnant, but it would be dangerous for her to carry it through. She will die. Hachamim אומרים אחת זו ואחת זו משמשת כדרכה והולכת, ומן השמיים ירחמו שנאמר שומר פתאים השם. Hachamim say no, either way she need not use a contraceptive cloth, because it's very rare that we would have such a problem, and Hashem will take care of the poor people who may be in trouble. In other words, it's likely that she cannot become pregnant, and if she does, she won't be dangerous. So that's Chachamim. Okay, now the point of all this, bringing all this, is to prove that a minor girl cannot become pregnant. That's evident either way. Either she cannot become pregnant, or if she does become pregnant, she cannot give birth because she'll die. So either way, she's not going to have a healthy child. So then, therefore, if it is a case of Mema'enet, then there cannot possibly result in a child being born. So instead we say Mashkachada b'kedushe ta'ut uchdar Yehuda amar Shimon damar Yehuda amar Shimon mishum Rabbi Yishmael vehi lo nitpasa asura hanitpasa muteret. You can have a case where the adult woman was married, did kiddushin with a man, but there was something wrong with the kiddushin. There was a condition that was not fulfilled, or something else wrong. And so she was she thought at least she was legally married. It was not zinut, it was not promiscuous. And this would follow the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael, who says that v'hi lo nitpasa, if a woman is not coerced, this is regarding sotah, then she is prohibited to her husband, because that means she was willing. But if she was coerced, then she is permitted. It was against her will. This adulterer forced her, and so she can go back to her husband. Now, from the extra word v'hi, we learn that besides the person who is forced, the woman who is raped, also there is another case that even though she is not raped, she's not forced, she is still allowed to go back to her husband. Someone who did kiddushin, but there was something wrong with the kiddushin, like a condition that was not fulfilled. That person is permitted. Even if she has a child riding on her shoulders. So it's very clear that she had a child from the second husband. Nevertheless, she can go ahead and refuse the original husband by saying that the kiddushin was not good and proving that it was not good, and she can go on her way. So here, Shemuel can construct a case where a woman was legally married to the first guy. At the time, it was permitted, but it turned out that the kiddushin was ta'ut, so we don't call that promiscuous, a zinut. So therefore, she is allowed to marry a kohen after that. Was not divorced. And so she can, and therefore that child that results from it will be a kosher kohen, and therefore can serve. So no matter what, either father is a kohen, and she's not a zonah, and that could be a case that could reconcile Shemuel. All right, very good. We may as well just finish the Perek. Hayu shenehem kohanim. We mentioned the case if they're both kohanim, and within that we talked about tenur banan hikazeh v'chazar v'hikazeh. We talked about a case where a child where we're not sure is her first husband the father or the second husband. So if he hits only one of them, so then he's exempt from capital punishment because maybe that one was not his father. But this baraita is a more complicated case. What if he hits both the husband A and husband B? So he definitely hit one of them that he hit was definitely his father. Or kilel zeh v'chazav kilel zeh. He cursed both husbands. One of them is for sure his father. Or kilel shenehem bebat achat. Or the first two cases were with two acts. He did one and then he did the other. But here, in one statement, he cursed both of you. So for sure, in that one statement, he violated cursing his father. Or he hit both of them. at once with one blow. Hayav. So in that case, since for sure one of them was his father, he would be liable to capital punishment. Rabbi Yehuda makes a distinction between these cases and says if he did it in one shot, one statement or one blow, then he'd be liable. But if it was one after the other, then he would not be liable, because then we would judge each act that he did separately. This one is maybe his father, maybe not, so exempt. And the other one, same thing. Good. And now we have a challenge. Did Rabbi Yehuda really say that? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Patur bebat achat. Here, the second baraita, he is more lenient. He says even if he acted at once, he is not liable. And the answer is, there must be two traditions of the memorizers in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. Why would you say patur? When it says beracha here, it means actually cursing. It's using a euphemism. And in that, within the Torah, it talks about two cases of cursing. One referring to beracha of Hashem, and later on it talks about the cursing of a parent. So ma'alash and bashutafut regarding Hashem, there's no possibility of partnership. God is only one, and so that statement that he says would have to be towards just one being, God. Aflamatash and bashutafut. So too, the one later on regarding a parent has to be a statement that does not involve any partnership. So if he curses two people, one is parent, one is not, then that's not a definition of the prohibition that would be liable. And so therefore in this case, since he is cursing both husbands, one is father, one not, no, that is partnership. So it's okay. It's not okay, but it's not liable. And then since that's true regarding cursing, we compare it to hitting, and so therefore that would be the same, and that's why the Rabbi Yehuda would say patur, because they're also only if he curses or hits only his father, not if he joins other people within, because that would be partnership. All right. And lastly, the Kohen who is not sure who his father is, but both fathers are Kohanim. So in that case, he can go to the Bet HaMikdash, and he would go to the Bet HaMikdash both for the mishmar of husband A and for the mishmar of husband B. He can't eat anything when he gets there. Here's the question: since he's not going to receive a share in any of the sacrificial meat or other things that they divide, why would he bother going? So we say, what? Why should he go? Why should he not go? He says, I wanted to go do a mitzvah, right? Going and being in the Bet HaMikdash and helping out in whatever way he can is a mitzvah. So what we mean to ask is, Allah lokatani ela ole be'al korcho. It doesn't say if he wants to, he can. It says we make him go. And so what is his obligation? Why does he have to go, since anyway, he's not going to be able to partake in anything and not be an essential part of the service. And their answer is because of the family flaw. If he doesn't go, people will say, oh, look, isn't he part of that family? Isn't that his father? Look, he's not going. I guess there's something wrong with the whole family, with that whole tribe that he knows about. And so that will bring people to be suspects. So therefore, he has to go with both watches. And to the extent that he can help, that's a mitzvah also, even though he cannot eat of anything that belongs to that mishmar only. Okay, the Mishnah said if both of the husbands happen to belong to the same priestly watch, then he can go and partake and take a portion. He's allowed to eat, he's allowed to eat terumah and things that are kodesh, because he is for sure a kohen. It's just that the people in a certain watch will not let him if he cannot prove that he's in that watch. But if both of his potential fathers, are in the same watch, then for sure he is part of it and can partake. Now, now, if if his two potential fathers are in different watches, what's the reason why he cannot partake? Well, it's because this family will push him out and say, hey, you're not part of our family. And the other one will also push him out and say, hey, prove that you're part of our family. And so therefore he cannot partake. But by that same reasoning, we should not let him partake in any single day. Within the mishmad, each mishmad was split up into a bet av. And so each bet av would serve on different days of the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So now he doesn't know what bet av he is, and therefore, if he goes on Sunday, the other bet av will say, "Oh, that's you. Your father is on Monday," and the one on Monday will say, "Your father is the one on Sunday," and so they will still reject him, and he won't be able to participate. So the answer to that is Amar Papa Hachi Amar Hachi Ka'amar Im Hayu Shenehem Mishmar Echad U Bet Av Echad Notel Chelek Echad. If he both of the husbands of his mother were from not only the same Ishmael, but even the same Bet Av, even the same patrilineal clan, then he knows that either way he can partake of the clan that serves on that particular day of the week, and that's what the Mishmar was talking about. Hadran alach nosin al ha'anusa.